Hello and welcome back to my channel. So this week you'll actually get to hear my conference presentation that I was prepping for in last week's video. I hope you all enjoy. There'll be a paper title and then the abstract of the paper, and then it moves straight into me giving the paper presentation.
Alright, so I'm just going to jump right on in and just start with my paper. The work of curating the history of education in the U.S. is one of recognizing the harms of education and school development for indigenous communities. Understanding that indigenous populations' education was developed as an oppressive tool used for cultural extraction and colonization of indigenous communities and children. I am acknowledging that harm and telling the story of a community who has persevered even when their identity and personhood have been questioned or ignored entirely. The United States government assimilation, cultural extractive, and exploitative educational agenda continues to send shockwaves through educational practices. Foundational to the U.S. educational system is seeking control of children extending to their parents through a quest to develop good citizens, where education was used as a mechanism in the U.S. imperial projects. This desire to control citizenship through Americanization finds its way into the historical roots of educational curriculum and pedagogical practices and educational policies. Colonized educational curriculum centering subjects that were important from a European epistemology. Curriculum also centers the notions of Christian morality and prioritized Christian teachings, adding to the colonistic project of saving souls and colonizing minds. Early education reformers believed their Christian duty was to educate African American and indigenous children, and saw citizen education and Christian teachings working together to help the white community keep the white community safe and not be dragged down. This practice involved manual labor schools and education serving as an avenue to gain access to native labor, land, and resources. In addition, congressional compulsory attendance laws were passed, and the national agenda of extracting native children from their communities through boarding school education enacted. Thomas Andrews used the term architects of assimilation to describe the federal government's Indian education agenda. These architects of assimilation were the white couple sent to manage the day schools in indigenous communities. The architects were confident that this program of moral indoctrination, linguistic instruction, and manual training would turn Indians into Americans, and thought the schools would sow the seeds of civilization. Despite this agenda enacted by the federal government, there are examples of indigenous communities reclaiming education and schools as locations to meet the needs of their communities. These accounts are found in the narratives of the Pine Ridge Day Schools and community schools in Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota. This national agenda helps to situate and move specifically to North Carolina, and later the Lumbee education in Robeson County, North Carolina. In North Carolina, the Supreme Court held to the notion that schools should be separated but needed to be equal, although historically white schools received more monetary amounts and physical space and buildings for schools. North Carolina courts justified these actions because they felt separation of race was a benefit to white children, because they would not be badly influenced by black children, and black children wouldn't be treated with prejudice. The state of North Carolina, as demonstrated in their laws and verdicts, believed there were differences among the two races at the time and believed that separating the races was needed to, quote, achieve a vital public good. The scholarship of race and education in North Carolina lacks nuanced discussion of Indian education in the state, specifically the history of how community members of the Lumbee tribe claimed education for their community. In 1885, the Lumbee people, once called the Croatan, became a third race legally in North Carolina. This new legislation entitled the Croatans to state funding for public schools. Although the North Carolina State Constitution of 1868 provided white children ages 6 to 21 access to public education free of charge. By 1868, Croatan Indians were labeled as free persons of color. However, they were still restricted from attending white schools. During this time, the federal government was well into appropriating funding for Indian education, and the number of boarding schools for Indian children had more than doubled. The 1885 Croatan legislation begins, quote, whereas the Indians now living in Robeson County claim to be descendants of a friendly tribe who once resided in eastern North Carolina on the Roanoke River, known as the Croatan Indians. Although the focus of my paper is not this statement, it is worth noting that historical statements like this shape how populations of people, including the Lumbee, are depicted in historical documents. This usage of the word claims questions individuals and how they identify themselves. As writers of this legislation who deem themselves as historical experts with the community, they plant doubt and question a community's lived experience. Usage of the word friendly also begs the question if friendliness was a necessary trait for acknowledging and legalizing a group's lawful existence and the right to public education. Section 2 of the legislation states that Indian schools can select teachers of their own choice, and Section 4 granted access to any Indian school accommodating the Croatan race in the county if district Indian schools were unavailable. This section states that schooling for Indians can only take place in Robeson County. With the national backdrop of Reconstruction and westward expansion, the urgency of this legislation caught my attention. How much had the national agenda of educating the Indians made its way into the hearts and minds of North Carolina legislators? Hamilton Macmillan brought the Croatan legislation to state officials. He was an amateur historian, and his true sentiments of the Croatan people are reflected in his writings when he and others found skeleton remains. He wrote, quote, the cranium found are all Caucasian type and showed greater intellectual development of those savage Indians, end quote. Despite these thoughts of North Carolina lawmakers, the Lumbee asserted the need for education for their children even when the state of North Carolina did not recognize them as a race. In 1885, when the legislation passed acknowledging Croatan Indians as a third race, the United States Census showed 1,100 Croatan students of school age. As urgent as the 1885 legislation may have been, it was not until 1887 that the Croatan normal school opened, which had 15 students and the goal of training teachers from the Croatan race. Jumping ahead 30 years to 1916, let me see if I can transition to this picture I have. I'll try to throw it up later. I don't want to use time up trying to figure out technology. So again, jumping ahead to 1916, so 30 years from the 1885 legislation, the normal school had a total of 167 students. The curriculum in 1916 included domestic science, music, and women were taught domestic education, which the principal relays has been the most important teaching of the girls because of how their parents praised their interest in housework, cooking, and sewing. The principal of the normal school in 1916, H.A. Neal, encouraged the state of North Carolina to provide more funding to furnish the dormitory, add an additional teacher, and provide a covering for one of the school buildings. Neil marries this ask with discussing how much the school has grown over the years, how much progress has been made, and how far behind some of the Indians are. Neil closes his principal report with, quote, "But the most progressive ones and the best citizens among them are trying to send their boys and girls to school, and the education we give them will make them citizens and better farmers of them, and the state of North Carolina will be benefited." End quote. Research from North Carolina focuses on the normal school, but as discussed above, the normal school was used as a training school for Native teachers. In 1885, there were 7 one-room schools for Indian children. By 1920, this swelled to 35, yet only provided formal education to the 4th grade. And the Lumbee community received their first high school in 1924. In 1940, the number of schools offering high school credentials increased to 7, and enrolled at all of the schools for Native children was 5,356. In 1965, the site for the future Pembroke Senior High School campus was purchased by Robeson County Board of Education.
The site was purchased with funding by the state, but the leaders of the normal school and state officials continued to rely on the community to supplement the education of Lumbee children. In 1909, when it was decided to move the normal school to Pembroke, North Carolina, quote, "the center of Indian community," the community came together to donate land, supplies, and hold education rallies to subsidize the move. The normal school continued to be the epicenter of public education and teacher preparation among the Lumbee people, and by 1941 became Pembroke State College for Indians and now stands as the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. There's still much to be explored, and many of the narratives found omit the contributions of women in the development of schools and Indian education in Robeson County. The history and education of the Lumbee people have been orchestrated by those outside the community, and always with a white gaze. I continue to sit with the question of what were the motives of these white leaders, and how did their support benefit them politically and economically. Dr. Melinda Maynard Lowry, Lumbee historian, raises the questions of the role the outsider has played in education and schooling and identity development among Lumbee people. This role of outsider is generally held by white men, rendering judgment, writing historical events, and enforcing their ways of knowing and being onto Lumbee people. This paper scratches the surface of history of education, waiting to be shared through the words of those who cultivated formal schools and education for the Native community of Robeson County. My research will continue to tell their stories, and I look forward to crafting a history that centers the resiliency and dedication that the Lumbee people have. I want to share a historical narrative that embodies and acknowledges how Lumbee people claim their power and have shaped education to meet their community's needs. Hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed listening to my conference paper from a couple weeks ago. The video cut off, as I said in the video, so I had to voice over the last part of my paper, which was just about over a page. But I hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions about my research or just other questions in general, just let me know down in the comments. I hope you will subscribe, like, and comment. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good day. Bye.